Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Become a channel member where you'll get access to all archive videos. Support black male media, support independent media, super chats enabled, super thanks for the replay gang. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. And if you'd like to feed me sandwiches, all methods apply. Sandwich gang in the building. Don't mess with my sandwich money. A ninja gotta eat, Dusty and all. And I'll eat a Dusty sandwich, so and I can eat sandwiches you can be quite affordable. So anyhow. Well, guess what? Case Closed is back. Case Closed is back. Case Closed is back. And you know that we had to come back and give you a little bit of assessment, analysis, post-election. I might gloat a little bit, and I might spike the football a little bit on that. My prediction was precisely correct on the outcome of the election, down to the exact electoral college and the fact that Trump won the popular vote. I may mention that a few times. Just this is you're being warned. That is a thing that is likely to happen. But we're not just talking about winning now. So, all right. So Trump won. If you like that outcome, if you don't like that outcome, that's what happened. I'm a third party guy. My preference would have been to see a third party candidate win, but we understand that in this sort of duopoly that is not very likely. Although third party candidates did make quite a bit of progress. It was, and there was some polling that took place also of registered Democrats and Republicans, those that are most likely to vote, and they said that at better than a 50% clip that they would like third party options. And so this is a trend. We're seeing that there is significant issues. A lot of folks are really dissatisfied with the quality of the candidates. I even said myself that I thought that perhaps the vice presidential candidate for president and for the Democrat and for the Republican may have actually been stronger candidates than the presidential candidate. So it's interesting. And there's all kinds of other issues that we can unpack and we can get into. The working class vote. Who did that working class vote go to? You saw that 1 out of 3 men of color voted for Trump. And this is now, of course, all of this is polling data. It's all based on polling data. 78% of black men voted for Trump, and I've seen around the space people lamenting that 78% is too high. Well, perhaps, but I'm sorry, it's too low. 78% is too low, right? Perhaps, but also you have to keep in mind that that's based on polling, exit polls. It's based on exit polls, and it's anonymous or whatever. But how many people are going to answer accurately and honestly and blah blah blah? You have all that, and you have to know also that more than half of folks that are eligible to vote. I'm sorry, less than half of the eligible folks vote. Less than half. So there's a lot of things to consider and a lot of things to unpack. But we know who won. Now it's about governing. Governing. And Trump has made all kinds of interesting sort of picks for his cabinet and for critical positions within government. And so, yeah, some of which seem to be, pretty down the middle. Some of them are, there's a lot of consternation, about these picks. So we're going to see what about that. But, we're going to get right into it here. Thanks for being here. And when you hear, and when you see, my beautiful face again, then we'll be in full throat for another much anticipated and long awaited episode of Case Closed. Let's go.
Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Case closed.
Let me see here. Okay, there we are. There I am indeed. Case closed indeed. We got the all-star panel. Just getting right into it like we never paused. Like it's just the same train going down the tracks. And Dr. Thunder has already elucidated, enumerated all the different things that are pertinent to this conversation, the conversation about the election, and on this very show, yes, on this very weekly show, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sunday, we've been talking about this topic, right? Ever since we've talked about the Kamala debacle, the Joe Biden situation, predictions have been made, and on and on and on. I would like to just start here, though, and maybe I'll start with Kaizo and then Dr. Thunder. And regarding your, shall I say, feelings, surprised, not surprised, with the outcome, the specifics of the outcome being a full throated, if you will, victory, resounding victory, doing things that Republicans cannot easily do, given the fact that the blue states and the blue cities specifically have a lot of population, so you cannot win that popular vote. But Trump won the popular vote and the electoral college and all that kind of stuff. So your experience internally and then what you're seeing around people, some people have commented, for example, that the, dare I call it, hysteria is not the same way it was in 2016 and whatnot. But Kaizo, what are your thoughts, generally speaking, and what do you see around you? What's been the general commentary on the, what's been in the air, what's been in the zeitgeist regarding this election, sir?
Yeah. So depending on which spaces that you're in, obviously you're gonna see slightly different feelings. Now, generally speaking, from what I've seen on the left, the liberals, I'm seeing a lot of a lot of it's more than hysteria, right? Delusion going on. The people there still can't believe Trump won, and I think that actually kind of goes to show the kind of world that they live in, right? They can't understand that how 50% of the country would vote for Trump, but it was telling, right? This whole thing was telling. If you look at the kind of person Trump had as a what do you call it, component, Kamala Harris didn't really make any sense. She wasn't able to answer questions succinctly. You ask her how she's going to fix the economy, she starts telling you how she grew up in a middle class family. Right? I think Trump is just a lot more relatable to people, and the hysteria of whether he's racist or whether his leadership is going to somehow revive, the triple K movement, right, and things like that. That's a separate thing. I think there is true fear in the left that somehow this Trump winning is going to be, embolden these racists from the right. But the reality is this, right? If you look at the reality, is that Trump actually was the more salient person in the African spaces. Everyone's happy. All the Africans voted for Trump, right? Whether they're American or the ones back at home, there is a very clear pro-Trump, anti-Kamala thing going on. And if you look at, generally speaking, Africans are conservatives, right? Even Black Americans used to be conservative, actually. So that thing has always kind of been there. Trump was very clear. He's like, okay, we don't want to be teaching kids, to change their agendas, right, and stuff like that. There's certain things, right? If you look at America as a country, Trump just was more American. Kamala Harris seemed like she was a plant by the establishment.
Okay, okay, very well put, very well put. The African coons cooning as they usually do, and so on. Dr. Thunder, what are your thoughts on this, and what is the your you kind of also exist within that within academia,
Yeah.
and in those spaces, to which I've seen things, there are people whom A have predicted, and now B are completely surprised. They cannot seem to fathom or imagine whom this person is that voted for Trump or why they would vote for Trump. And you have the people saying things such as like the authoritarian will happen and blah blah blah. But your thoughts and what you're seeing around you, just a quick commentary on that.
Yeah. So, you know, with the whole sort of total delusion, like just not comprehending how other people could actually have different perspective or different viewpoint. And it kind of it underlines. See, all of these issues are the same issue. So you have the issues that are in the sort of dating environment. You have the same sort of manifestation of those same issues in the voting dynamic, because the and especially in this election, the Republican sort of represents more of the masculine, and the Democrat uh, represents more of the feminine. And the the thing about this is, it used to be that we understood that men think differently than women do, and that they, since they have a different experience of life, they may tend to draw different conclusions, but there wasn't like a demonizing of people based on the fact that they've drawn different conclusions based on those experiences, right? And in this election, you see that a bunch of people, different pockets of folks, voted in ways that maybe were not expected. But if you actually consider their life, their lived experience, if you actually consider uh, what it was the sort of the issues that were most important to them, again based on their lived experience, then it actually makes a lot of sense. You have working class folks voting for Trump. Why did working class votes, which typically have gone Democrat, why have they voted for? Why did they report? I'm sorry. Why did they vote for the Republican? And you can say, well, it's misinformation, it's propaganda, and they don't know what's best for themselves, and they're listening to the wrong stuff, and Fox News, and fake news, and all. You can do that if you want to, but the outcome is that certain groups voted in a way that they don't usually vote, and it really seemed to be along sort of the gender lines. It was really kind of a fascinating. I think a lot of people are going to be studying this election for a long time, because I think that it actually spells out a lot of the issues that are just present. I mean, you can look at the dating environment, and you can find the same sort of dynamics, and you have different pockets of people that can't seem to understand the other person's perspective and why they would have a different viewpoint. And it's like, really? When did this change? That's always been the case. What's different is that people feel emboldened to just demonize people and to otherize people based on drawing different conclusions, and therefore voting a different way. Um, so and I on my channel, I tend to talk about relationships, politics, and religion. Those are the things that I talk about, because those are and by my estimation, are the most important things. Now, my perspective tends to be, it tends to be towards a black male and black boys advocacy sort of perspective. That's my angle, but those are the topics that I discuss. And I've noted that with varying degrees, in varying ways, each of those topics, each of those subjects, whatever, it's the same sort of issues that you're seeing. It's the same sort of issues. The election is just the same thing again. So I just think that's very interesting, because people, why are you all talking about relationships? Why are you talking about this? Why are you talking about that? Well, it's because it's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff.
So, an interesting
And by
point
the
there.
way, it seems like I'm hearing the room more than I'm hearing the mic. So I wonder if the mic is not actually selected, and maybe you have another microphone turned on instead of the.
Yeah, yeah. Even though, yeah. So I may be having some issues.
Okay,
Um,
we can hear you just fine, but I just wanted to
okay.
tell you that.
Yeah, my bad. Happened to me yesterday too. I only recognized it after the end, but I will fix it soon. So you mentioned
I
something
was
about
blaming
gender.
my speakers.
the while there was the gender divide was stark, Trump did gain uh, on the women's side amongst
Yep.
many different demographics of women, other
Well,
than I believe college
well,
education.
so here's and I was looking at was watching the Funky Academic, who I thought made an interesting assessment, which is 100% true. Um, so white women are the reason that Trump is in office. Okay, white women are the biggest voting bloc, and all of that girl power, you go girl, um, you know, strong and independent, all of that stuff that the white feminists taught black black women, black feminists, the white feminists, they talked all that big yang yang, and then they went behind the curtain and at a better than 52% as a block voted for Trump, right? Whereas black women voted 92% for Trump. So it's that's sort of an interesting sort of dynamic there, because what seems to be the case is, although there is big talk, maybe in like bar conversations and loud talking in I don't know, in academic circles, what seems to actually happen is white women understand that if they really and truly undermine their men, that they're done.
Oh yeah,
Whereas it doesn't seem that black women understand that. They think that they can
yeah.
still
I
do this
want to
without
chime in
us.
after.
So,
Yeah, I want to chime in here.
sure.
I think this has generally been an issue within the black community around the Western world in general. I remember when I studied sociology in the UK, they kept showing us that apparently it was culturally speaking, especially the black people in the UK came from the islands, Caribbean islands,
Mm.
and apparently, it's actually written right in the textbooks that black women have always been matriarchal, and the cultures that they come from is matriarchal. So there was this idea that they're pushing forward this independence, right? Like black women are the symbol for white women to aspire to, almost like they break out of when they're feeling rebellious. However, the reality is the white women are married compared to the black women. They go back to their husbands, go back to their kids. Meanwhile, black women are kind of utilized as the guinea pigs, whereby the culture, starts to break down, degeneracy kind of pulls in. But I think white women, generally speaking, they understand that the men who protect them, provide for them the countries and economies that they have. But black women seem to be competing with black men as opposed to actually working with black men. So there's
Yeah.
that spirit sort of sentiment there, and they don't seem to understand it. Right? At the end of the day, patriarchy is one of the most meaningless distinction when it comes to hierarchical structures in society. Race, right? Race matters, right? Race is more of a real
100%.
construct. So a lot of black women seem to forget this. At the end of the day, they believe in this intersectionality. Now they've added their own abstractions into these concepts. Meanwhile, black men are not being propped up enough, and they think they're winning because they got a little bit of job, right? Dwight man tricked them and said, "Hey, look, you're now working, right? Neoliberalism, right?" And that's what they think.
Cutting out there, or was it just
Yeah,
me?
yeah. I think you got cut off, Kaizo. That's cool. Um,
Mhm,
why don't
mhm.
you keep go ahead, Ike?
So there are a couple of things here that I would like to just reiterate, point out, and whatnot. What Kaiser was just talking about is there's a book by Tom Wolfe called The Bonfire of the Vanities, okay? And in there, he kind of coined this concept called the radical chic. These days, people talk about it in terms of what they call luxury beliefs, whereby people who live upper middle class lifestyles with all the values, virtues, and mores implied by that, such as a strong family unit and emphasis on education and all that typical boring middle class stuff, um, reach out and preach all kinds of craziness, right? All kinds of latitudinarianism and extra liberalism and freedom and going crazy and wild, while they don't live that life themselves. And they
100%.
can, yeah, and it's something whereby you don't have skin in the game, but you can kind of show how wild you are
Right.
by saying these things that affect other people. Other people can take cues if the people who are indeed taking cues from you, as Kaiser has suggested, or people taking cues from each other, or some kind of mimetic kind of thing going on there. Uh, there is a group that is shielded from the consequences of these things, and that would be the group in that gated upper middle class community, living their lives in a particular way with their kids going to Ivy League schools from two-parent households and whatnot. But they'll preach all kinds of things that kind of promote, the single mother lifestyle or whatever it may be, right? So uh, I hope that is something that becomes more and more stark in the awareness of people as we go forward here. When it comes to lessons learned, because we're going to now ease into this governance aspect of the conversation, right? Because it could be argued that Trump was not able to, if you take a step back, populism, or when populists win, it's always difficult for them to then transition into governance because populists are typically outsiders by definition, right?
Yep.
You have the establishment, whether it's in the party or in the administrative state, and then you have this person agitating from outside, representing the plebs, the people, the populists. They come in, and then there is this, well, what do you do now? Because there's so many blocks in there within your party, within the administrative state, and within all these other kinds of things. But we're going to ease in there by beginning with the lessons perhaps that could be learned. You mentioned, for example, the working class, traditionally Democrat. And one thing, by the way, that this election showed was that things are not as racially divided in this country as people thought it was, right?
Right.
That perhaps people will go on the populism. They'll pick populism over their race. It would seem, right? They'll pick the jobs and or what people like to term in a rather derogatory way, culture wars. And culture
Yep.
wars are essentially populist. They'll pick that over their race. And that is a good thing. If, let's say, I was Mr. Democrat strategist, I'll be like, you know what? This actually is good because, hey, maybe I can go back to my unions and I can go back to, the working boots and talk about meat and potato type issues. And maybe I can actually win in that direction.
Right.
And perhaps the influence peddling by certain giant corporations and globalists. Now I sound like Alex Jones, but that whole thing that I've been beholden to, it's not going to work for me anymore. And maybe I could go back to this kind of populist thing. But is there anything that you think, beginning with Dr. Thunder and Kaizo, if he's back, that what are the lessons here do you think that the Democrats can draw, and will they draw it? For example, in this case of the working class, perhaps going back to appeal to the working class and whatnot.
Um, so you were asking what can the Democrats learn from this?
Yeah, how can Democrats learn from this, presuming that they left this populist,
Right.
the working class populism and kind of went for a more
Yeah. Yeah.
intersectional kind of oppression type stuff?
Yeah. I've been really digging the channel Sabby Sabs. She is a um, uh, great analysis, and she's a third party. She tends to actually be more sort of Green Party. So she's on the left, but her assessment of this entire thing has been spot on, really spot on, and I think she's somebody that folks should uh, should check her out. You don't have to agree with her on some of the policies and some of the things she advocates for, but as far as her analysis of this thing, one of the things that she was saying was about Bernie Sanders. Okay, now the because she believes that Bernie Sanders could have actually won the election, but what happened was the Democrats were playing that, they're playing that dirty ball, and ended up pushing him out in favor of what was it, in favor of Biden, one time in favor of what's her name, Hillary Clinton,
Hillary.
one time, right? So he actually, or I'm sorry, Sabrina actually believes that he would have won. It's possible that he could have won, right? Um, and then the other thing is that she mentioned was that really if it wasn't for the pandemic, Biden would not have beaten Trump. Okay, the pandemic is really what defeated Trump. And I think that this is evidence, this what happened in this election is evidence that that would have been the case. Because what? Because old girl is talking about how, Kamala's talking about how she wouldn't do anything differently. She can't, nothing comes to mind of how she would have, done things differently. She was really, really apprehensive to say anything basically negative about, any of the decisions that Biden had made or whatever. No, so people believed that they were voting for another 4 years of Bidenomics, right? And you saw what happened. And they love to say this, and I think this totally backfires. And it's not for the reason that, a lot of folks from the left, MSNBC and a bunch of these celebrity shills, Kamala supporters would say stuff like, well, they're saying that because he's a felon that black people relate with him. Y'all should be offended by that. But it's like they're missing actually what's being said there. What's being said there is, by constantly calling him a felon, in understanding the history of this country and who has been called felons for stuff that they didn't even do and has been railroaded disproportionately and then didn't have the resources to be able to defend themselves and were given disproportionate sentences. And then not only that, when you look at the new Jim Crow, as it were, you look at how it is totally legal to eviscerate one's civil rights if they're a felon. If they were a convicted felon, then you can eviscerate their rights. You can prevent them from having jobs. You can do all of these things. So I think from the left, they thought that this was a good talking point and strategy to keep hammering the felon. He's a felon. He's a felon. But I think that backfired in a way that they were. It was obvious to me that it was going to backfire. But I can see how in that sort of echo chamber that they would think that would just be like a death nail against Trump. And it's like, look, all of the other stuff that's happened in the past, all the stuff that you've thrown at the cat that doesn't stick, or stuff that kind of stuck, but it doesn't matter. It's because people in general, they don't care about that issue. The most important thing to them is, how am I going to pay these bills? And I think the general mistake that the Democrats made is that they spent most of their time talking about what I call boutique political issues. Okay? And the common man cannot afford to shop at the boutique store. Right? The common man is thinking about stuff like inflation. How much is this job going to pay? They're thinking about stuff like, well, if we have all this illegal immigration, and especially the working class folks, when these folks come in, these illegal immigrants, and get paid pennies on the dollar, how am I going to be able to keep my job? So they're thinking more on the sort of bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, whereas the liberals are all focusing on this stuff at the very pinnacle of this stuff, like reproductive justice and misogyny and all this kind of stuff. They're constantly talking about that stuff, and it's like, look, I'm opposed to misogyny or whatever as much as anybody else is. However, if I can't eat, that's kind of more important. And so those sort of boutique intersectional feminism and all that kind of stuff, those kinds of issues, I think they got I think they got their hat handed to them based on focusing on
So
the wrong stuff.
mhm. I wanted to come in if I can.
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead and perhaps to finish what the point you were making, and then also answer the question here. Uh, just to kind of buttress some of the things that Dr. Thunder mentioned, or to also by way of summary, there is, because the question on the table is what can the Democrats learn? Dr. Thunder started by talking about the candidate herself. Now, you can say it's a little bit of a tricky situation if you are the vice president and things perhaps are not that great. Maybe it's not entirely your fault, but how do you decouple yourself? But it's not super complicated, okay? Everybody has had a boss before, and everybody knows that, hey, you pretty much kind of follow what the boss is going to say, and maybe there's a committee, and I had some viewpoints that were maybe voted down, but now it's going to be my show, right? You can say things like that. You can basically say, hey, look, Joe did a great job, right? Here, perhaps are some things that we thought were going to go right, but didn't go the way that it should have gone. And when it's my turn now, I'm going to be pushing forward these three things, right? Which I think are top priority since now it's my role. And I did the best, and I did a good job for Joe and all that kind of stuff, right? You can put Joe up there and say, yes, I worked for Joe and I did the best I could, but blah, 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 but I was not the boss, right? And I
Right.
think people understand that. Like, especially with the vice president role, people know that the vice president doesn't really, can't really move much, right? Can't really do stuff, okay? But she could even do that, and that was particularly troubling. That particular question that you said you could not answer, Dr. Thunder. And then
Yeah.
there's the aspect of, okay, the not not understanding the mindset of the people whom will vote for Trump, and thinking that quote unquote lawfare and all these other things was going to work, dismissing the legitimate concerns and calling racist, for example, the people whom are seeing their way of life, economic, social, and otherwise, being eroded by a border situation that is out of control. You can't just say, okay, you may disagree with them. You may say maybe they're a little bit hyperbolic with regards to their worries and whatnot, but you can't just your program cannot just be they're racist. Okay,
Yep.
it's not going to work. They're racist and he's a felon. They're racist, he's a felon. It doesn't. It's not going to be that way. But anyways, go ahead, Kaizo, and respond.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that did happen here that I think we haven't explored is the divine nature of this whole election in this time around. Trump survived, you know, an aliving attempt, and I think that definitely kind of a made him famous. Everybody knew who Trump was, and around the world. And obviously, that kind of spiraled into more conversations, Twitter reposts. So he was cooking the algorithm, right? And on top of that, that's basically free publicity and marketing. He survived that. And not just that, good men of God, right? Red blooded, plain piece of paper Americans had dreams that he's going to win the election. So I do believe that, Dwight God definitely helped Trump to win this election. Like it really was a significant portion to to him actually winning. The other aspect of Trump, right, is the fact that actually nobody wants, right? Black Americans don't want their jobs, black jobs, right? That was an interesting thing, right? He kept talking about black job. Well, we're thinking, well, what is a black job? But we know what a black job is, right? These are, black collar works, right? The jobs that the Mexicans do, the African immigrants and the black Americans do. None of these people want people coming from the border and out competing them and reducing
100%.
the money that comes in. That's the thing, and it's kind of interesting. People talk about racism, but racism is not the issue here. Like nobody's being periodically made to smoke trees, right? Using that, that's not a thing that happens in mass. So racism is not an issue. People need to feed their families. People need to create generational wealth. So when even if you came through the border and you jumped across it, you still don't want the next guy coming in and taking your job. That's just a reality, right? Because you now become a shareholder in America. Now, when you're a shareholder in America, that's the issue that they didn't seem to realize. They did this kind of crazy analysis of what I came through. Bro, I'm from the UK, right? I'm in London. I'm not going to want random Nigerians coming in, taking my job, when they're going to outcompete me. At this point, I want to build my country and keep moving forward. And I think that's the other issue that the left does. The left, as you mentioned earlier, Dr. Thunder, they kind of act and think at the top of the funnel, right? Right at the top of the hierarchy of Maslow's needs, right? They
Mhm.
ignore the actual pyramid, and where the majority of voters actually look at is not just the single issues at the top that's philosophical. We talked about earlier, the concept of luxury of beliefs, right? Luxury of ideas. Most people don't have that. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck. They have a family to take care of. And at the end of the day, if you're being asked how you're going to fix the economy, well, I grew up as a middle class family. It's not good enough.
Mm.
All right, all right, all right. Uh, I'm sorry, Dr. Thunder, were you gonna
Yeah,
open
and
it
I
up?
was
All right.
just going to respond to Slick Rick's thing. Yeah, black jobs is more than just government jobs. Black jobs are jobs historically that had a disproportionate representation of black Americans working them. So jobs like Pullman porters, many of the sort of working class kind of jobs, policemen, nurses, maids, janitorial services. There's a long list, but the thing is a lot of those, including stuff like working the fields, picking fruit, all that kind of stuff. More of those would be black jobs if you couldn't pay people pennies on the dollar, illegal immigrants, to do those jobs. So it's not a two dimensional issue. I think the issue that, and I know that Slick Rick is on the right, but an issue, a mistake I think that folks on the left make frequently is they treat this like it's a two dimensional issue. Like, in other words, their argument only defeats that. Well, if we got those cats out of here today, black folks still ain't working those jobs, and so that's not really the issue. See, y'all ninjas don't want to work for 5 cents an hour, like that. So that ends up being the argument. But the problem with that, is that you have to wait a while before it actually starts to impact, the economics, how much a job actually pays. You have to wait a while. So I'd say, if you as these mass deportations start to take place, we'll see what the black jobs actually are. We'll see what how many more black men in particular are able to work, even if it is uh, uh, working in the field, working whatever it is, because you still have to have people to work those jobs, and so they're going to have to pay more for those jobs. And once those jobs actually pay more, then you can start talking about actually making enough money to survive, to live, to make a living on. So
Mhm.
I think that's so you have to look at it as multiple dimensions and stuff that's going to take place over time, not this sort of and I believe to be totally disingenuous sort of framing of, hey, well, black folks ain't don't want to work for $1 an hour, so see, that's a bogus argument, y'all just racist, and you should know better, because look at how this country did you. Now you trying to turn around and oppress other people. Rather than that kind of stupid argument. Come on, man. Like, this is going to happen over time. The economy didn't get wrecked overnight. These issues didn't become issues overnight. So stop arguing in a two-dimensional fashion that doesn't allow for time in the solution.
Very well put. Very well put. So, moving further now, and we'll also get to the Republican establishment as well, whom you brought up Bernie Sanders earlier. He did not succeed in kind of overturning an aspect of the Democrat establishment for the populist on the populist front. Uh, Trump, it seems, has now decisively kind of overturned the Republican establishment. We'll see what comes out of that. The Just a quick comment on the kind of authoritarian dictatorship kind of front. Trump is more like just like the mayor of America type stuff, and we've seen these types before. Perhaps Rudy Giuliani has been discredited now, but when he came in and he did his broken windows policy type of policing in order to clean up New York City, continued by Bloomberg, even though we can retrospectively look back and say, oh, stop and frisk was not that great, but definitely did kind of help get rid of the guns and stuff like that. But this kind of, I'm going to come in, I'm going to take charge, I'm going to clean things up, it's not something that is new in America. It's not like, oh no, he's going to be Hitler because he's saying he's trying to drain the swamp or something like that. It's I think that's a little bit of hyperbole. But there's another kind of hyperbole that is being, in my view, of hyperbole anyways, is being put out there, and this is about oligarchy. And then Elon Musk comes to mind, right? And now we have the new oligarch, Mr. Elon Musk, and his victory, which, by the way, Tesla stock is reflecting this, which you can say is now that Trump has won, people are like, oh, let's lean in on Tesla because if he lost, right, there was going to be more of that oppressive force, which you people can go study themselves regarding the things that are done with Elon's company. Now, this is not about whether Elon is not getting, it's not benefiting from government largesse and whatnot, but given the fact that he's in heavily regulated industries, they can make it very difficult for him, or they can make it easy for him. I mean, Elon was not invited to the EV summit, for example, in Washington. It's like it's Tesla, right? And you invite
Yeah.
these other car companies, and he's not there. And I think they tried. They spent like $5 billion or something trying to give internet to some rural areas when you have Starlink, right? These kinds of things, which are upfront kind of retaliation against Elon, right? And now he's here, and now people are talking about oligarchy and stuff like that. But we're not easing into that aspect of okay, so Elon comes in, Trump comes in, he has made some appointments and whatnot, and how are they going to be able to fare? So let me start with you, Kaiser, right? Um, and this is a rather abstract question. Previously, Trump was not able to succeed in terms of fighting the internal establishment and the donor base in the Republican Party and also the administrative state. Um, Elon is coming in and they're saying, okay, he's going to do this Department of Government efficiency, Doge, if you will, with Vivek Ramaswamy and whatnot. And they're going to be the czar of this kind of thing. And I'm going to lay some things on the table here regarding the issues. So the czar calls people in from these government agencies, the administrative state, if you will. He says, this is what we really want to do, and the president really wants it, and we have to do that. And then they go back across the street to their offices, and then they just do what they want. This is this is a typical pattern in any large organization, right? You have the people who control, right, like the managerial level, and then you have the people who actually have the keys and are actually driving the car. Those are the actual workers. The managers, at best, are sometimes just backseat drivers. The people who have the keys know the lay of the land and they know the roads, they know what works, they know how things work, and they have their preferences regarding what they're going to do. So having said all these things, what do you think the chances are of success of this new oligarchy that is going to come in? Do you think they'll be able to actually, increase government efficiency? How will they fare in this aspect of their governance? What are your thoughts, Kaiser?
Yeah, so I want to start by saying there's a company that's sort of trading in Ghana and other African countries called Atlantic Lithium. Stock prices, etc., are going to go higher on that. Right now, since Trump and Elon Musk are now in power. Now, for me to answer this question, I'll say this: it's not just in America that we're having this oligarchy, power ship going on. Kenya right now is making a deal, full diplomatic immunity to an American billionaire with the name of Bill Gates, right, and his foundation. So I think right now, as these companies become multi-billion-dollar conglomerates, right, they now have access to power, information, and trade that can actually affect the economies. So in this case, when it comes to America, I do believe it's going to be successful. Like there's a few things that we see in America trying to set up, in relation to, let's say, materials engineering, with trying to revive the American electrochemical things going on, solar energy, nanotechnology, nanochips, and all that kind of stuff. So I think right now with this partnership, as I mentioned, Elon Musk is not going to be sort of going through all the hoops and tapes as he was previously, right? Trump is just not going to allow any judge to go around bringing him up over some bogus sort of testing. Now, here's the thing. I say this because both Trump and Elon Musk are risk taking people. Meaning, these people are trying to obviously make America great again, right? So, what I'm going to say here is going to be more jobs in America. This is my prediction. More jobs in America. More blue. There's going to be a new kind of economy whereby it's a mixed blue and white collar jobs. I'm talking about tech, and I'm talking about hardware tech. There's going to be a lot of technicians actually finding themselves in these jobs, assembling of batteries, as an simple example, processing of lithium as well. I believe that these companies will go back to America. America is understanding that it's been dominating the software game, but the world isn't just software, right? You need hardware. So yes, I think it's going to work. Like again, it's not really good for me as an African, right? But generally speaking, I think America's on the right trajectory. Make America great again.
Well, there you go, there you go, there you go. So, Dr. Thunder, first of all, do you think that it is at all dangerous for there to be this kind of oligarchy? Is Elon Musk a dangerous figure that needs to be watched closely? And now that he has, bought an election, and definitely secured an aspect of the future of his company, and perhaps, removed some of the some may consider guardrails, other considers obstacles. What do you think are the chances of success? And do you think that it is problematic? What are your thoughts in this area?
Yeah. So, okay. So, as if there hasn't always been an oligarchy controlling things. Now,
True.
if it is the case that he's going to be this oligarch that comes in and does whatever, which I don't think that that's the case, but say if it is, how is that any different? And wouldn't you actually like to know the name of the oligarch that's doing it, as opposed to this sort of shadow, this sort of shadow oligarchy? So I just think it's I just think it's some of that is silly. The other thing that is the case is what was going to happen on either side. All of the promises get made by all of the by the candidates, and then what happens is they have a meeting after the election's over, after they get in office, with the folks that are the boots on the ground, the people that actually understand the logistics. They actually understand how the government works. What are the parameters? What are the things that you can do? What are the things that you can't do? Who are the people that you actually need? Who are the people that are actually expendable? They're the ones that actually know that information. Okay? So the issue is they're going to come in, they're going to have their meeting with them, and then about 97, 98% of that stuff, all that big talk, all that heavy yin yang that they were talking, they're going to tell them, now you can't do any of that. And here's why. All right. Now, maybe they'll try to push it to more like 90%. But you still have a heavy percentage of the stuff that is said that, oh, we're going to come in, we're going to do this right away. They can't do almost any of that stuff. The ship is too big, and there's too many intricacies. There's too much gray area. There's too much nuance. There's too much. You need that guy. I know you hate that guy's guts, but you need that guy. You take that guy out of here, somebody worse comes in. So it's that kind of information is what happens. So it's just a lot of fear mongering. And frankly, it was fear mongering on both sides. The most consequential election of our lifetime. And if we don't get Trump in there, then America's over. Or if we don't get Kamala in there, then it's going to be, Trump is going to be in there for 20 years. He's going to be a king, and see, he set it up. Look, Project 2025, and all this stuff. It's all of this stuff, and it's like, look, the government is set up. There is separation of powers. There's protections from a despot to come in and go hog wild. And people act like Trump is the only person that had any sort of questionable and dubious, skeletons in his closet. Look, man, there have been folks running for president and they were in prison at the time. So I'm just saying, man, this stuff is so hyperbolic. That Trump derangement syndrome is real. It's incredible, man, because just even people that I think of as being reasonably, like I can talk to them about most things and it's pretty reasonable. They're pretty balanced. Anything that seems to be related to Trump, anything, they just totally just go nutso. And that's it's crazy. I've not seen anything like that.
A couple of things in the comment section here. Chukwu's talking about the fact that yes, they will be able to get the cabinet through the Senate, confirmations and whatnot, because it's a Republican, it was a Republican sweep.
Yeah, that's right.
And such. The challenge, though, Chukwu, is the fact that with populism, you're generally bringing in outsiders, and if you are bringing in insiders, let's say Marco Rubio, for example, because you can't have all outsiders, by the way. And if you are bringing in all insiders, then then nothing's going to change within the organization like that, right? And maybe there are insiders that have always had a different kind of a leaning, but now they have the impetus because they have the backing of a new mandate, if you will, and all those kinds of things. But still, it's yet to be seen, and it is indeed a challenge, right? So let's touch on this here. And the time seems to have moved pretty quickly, and unfortunately, but I think it's a good conversation regardless. Let's get to this point about Black men organizing, actively lobbying, and perhaps cashing in on the support for Trump. One could say, hey, well, they voted for him, not in super large numbers, but the ones that voted for him simply wanted him to go in there and, him and Elon and whatever to go do their thing, and that's enough. Others might say, well, first you bring the guy in, and then secondly, now you have to then present your agenda, your specific agendas to this person, which then I would perhaps push back saying, yeah, in America, it typically doesn't work that way, especially for Black men anyways. You're not going to have a Black man agenda written down anywhere.
Let me say this though. Remember Trump had his platinum plan, and the platinum plan was largely a sort of adapted contract with Black America. So in platinum plan actually had tangibles, it had actual numbers in specifics, and so I think the main thing for Black men is even to have any kind of sense that either one of these parties even has any reason, any incentive at all to do anything for you at all. I think one thing that was gained with this election is that although 78% still voted Democrat, that's a it's a lower percentage than it was the previous elections, and it's a trend. There's a trend of this, and so I think this trend is potentially could go in a way that the Democrats and the Republicans have to actually start offering tangibles. So I don't know. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it, but at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if there becomes more specifics. And even Kamala's totally weak attempt at, what is this opportunity opportunity agenda for Black men and others. That whole thing, which of course was not constitutional. Lawyers would have got in and just ate that stuff up for lunch. And also there was nothing specific for Black men. It was just some stuff that she had already said, but at least she was acknowledging her campaign was acknowledging that you got to do something. You got to do something for Black men. because we need that demographic. So that's really all you need. If you have that kind of leverage where now both parties feel like they have to actually look at your in your direction, I mean, I think that could go a long way if it's if the leverage is applied properly.
Good point. Good point. Good point. Yes, the Republicans would be incentivized to say, hey, we're actually peeling off some people over here. Let's maybe we can lean in more. And then Democrats are, as you said, exemplified by Kamala having to come out and say something,
Right.
even though perhaps too late and a penny short and a hour late, whatever it is that they say. Um, but still, it's a good sign, right? But Kaiser, what are your thoughts on this? You already talked about certain kinds of jobs. Now, Elon typically, Elon, if you will, is a certain kind of manufacturer. He has those interests. There's certain places that told him to go F himself. California representative specifically told him to go F himself, and he left California, went to Texas, and all these other kinds of things. And he has, and it is out there for you to go see, he has mentioned the ways in which the federal government is trying to put roadblocks on a lot of his his agendas, if you will, including some recent thing with dolphins that had to get tested or something like that. But do you think that black men perhaps could benefit? I know you mentioned it, you alluded to it. What do you think black men will have to do in order to maybe force the hand? Is it just enough to kind of peel off some votes and show that they are indeed able to be enticed? What are your thoughts in general about what needs to be done vis-a-vis organizing, lobbying, and getting your agenda out there, if you will?
This question is for me.
It's for Kaiser.
For Kaiser. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then you.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, this is a question about black men and organization within the black male community. Because at the end of the day, if you include black women, there's just a difference in what they value, right, as women, as well as the way that they've been allowed to move up this hierarchy that we have right now. So I think black men have to kind of decide what jobs that they want. There is, I'm very sure that in terms of manufacturing, technical jobs, being a technician, you can be trained up within, a few months. You're able to work in a factory, fixing up machines, uh, sort of assembling these, you know, um, electrochemical cells, right, batteries and stuff like that. And I think what black men need to do is say, look, we know that things are about to grow. We do want jobs. We do want access here, and I do think they have to be, it has to be organized, right? It can't just be a few people on YouTube talking about it, like Mike V or whatever. It has to be a collective of black people that come together and actually have meetings in churches, right? And go out there and lobby this stuff, right? The Somali community did it rather successfully, right? When in regards to Uber and online taxi services, because that's the jobs that a lot of them do. So yeah, I would say this is to do with the black male community. They do need to kind of just look at it like, well, we need jobs. We want to get jobs that have potential for growth. How do we get in? Elon Musk doesn't care about degrees or any of these sort of establishment metrics. He cares about, well, can you do the job? Are you going to be willing to be trained? Do you have industriousness? Are you conscientious? Do you actually want to have a job for like over a couple of years? And at the end of the day, when you're talking about uplifting and alleviating yourself from poverty, it's simply just get a job, keep a job, and don't be shit at a job. I mean, it's not that difficult. So I would say black men need to stop listening to all this nonsense about racism. Yeah, racism is real, but so are other issues, right? Go out there, start lobbying, and say, hey, look, jobs are being created. We want in.
Yeah, so Dr. Thunder, any commentary on both the question and what Kaiser said? Plus, there is a general, on that point of racism or the historical context within which the black community is in this country, historical context that makes it such that they're heavily on the Democrat side. Um, and there could be some pushback saying, hey, the Democrats have been the only ones who would even, maybe if it's only lip service or something like that, but you know, since the Civil Rights Act or whatever it may be, they're the only ones that are there. And why do you think that these Republicans are going to listen to you? Well, you wait. You go try to talk to those people. You go try to get into these particular rooms and see what will come of you. Such and such. It, you might call it fear mongering even. Um, but what are your thoughts in general? What I just said, what Kaizo said, and the question here on the table, which is still the organization, the lobbying. Is there anything to be done? Well, what do you say?
Yeah. So, um, this is this is just one of the steps in the process, and understand that uh, what I really want to see is more third party support, because I think that the entire system needs to be held accountable and needs to be shown that if you're not willing to do things that are going to be positive, specifically positive for the sake of black men and boys, and they can be things that are generally positive, but if that general positivity seems to skip us, then if you're not willing to make any adjustments, then we're going to do something else. I think that so that's what I in general when I see, but I like to see at least a larger percentage voting a different way than they had prior. That's positive because it shows that we're not a monolith. Now, we're still more monolithic than other groups, because when you look at other racial groups, black men and black women are still the most loyal to the Democrats. So I think we'd have to keep the same energy. We'd have to continue to vote what our interests are, and not sort of be guilted into doing things that we don't think are going to serve us. But then when you get to the table, then it's going to have to be, okay, now we have some leverage. Now we've shown that we're not going to just keep doing the same thing regardless as to if it's good or bad for us. We're not just because black women told us to do it. We're not going to do that. And so now what? Now what do you have to actually show us, to actually give us in exchange for our vote, just like they do with anybody else? And that's when you can start, rolling out whatever your whatever your desires, whatever your list of
Yeah.
gripes or complaints are, is when somebody's willing to actually listen. Nobody's been willing to listen thus far. That's been our challenge.
What do you think the Republican establishment? Let's say you are the Republican establishment, or this new Republican establishment that's being upturned. Because there are two parts to the question here. One of which we kind of addressed, generally speaking, and which we talk about the Democrats and what they could learn from this. You talked about the candidate. You talked about not
Yeah.
ignoring populism, not ignoring bread and butter issues and economic issues and things that people care about, not going all the way to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and coming back down, and all these other kinds of things. Yeah. The Republicans, though, whom have been overturned, and also this particularly new Republican Party, if you will, and vis-a-vis black men now. Let's say you're this particular establishment. What do you do? What's your next move? How do you court? How do you further these gains? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm going to say this: Republicans aren't our friends either. Neither Democrats or Republicans. But I will say this: that if it is the case that a growing constituency, a growing working class constituency, if that really becomes a thing, it is a thing now. If it continues to grow, I think that that's a net positive for black men, because I think the kinds of jobs that we tend to have are going to be within that sort of realm. So whatever's good for the working class American is also going to be good for the working class black American, and also the working class Hispanic American, for that matter. So, um, you know, yeah, they're racist. Democrats are racist too. They're all racist. They'd all rather, it would be a different dynamic, that they didn't have to actually address what it is that we're saying. That's fine. But if they need the vote, and it's been established that now you have a growing population of folks that are looking at Republicans that traditionally have not, I think that I think that actually plays for black men. I think that actually helps us, and it also creates a perhaps a place, a sort of um, what is it? An operation? What am I saying? A location of operation. What am I saying? Um, for us to get things specific to black men that aren't necessarily the things that black women would want, because black women are going to be more on the low end of things, and that is stuff like um, stuff like welfare, stuff like um, stuff like government programs, college grants, and all that kind of stuff. And then they're also going to be on the high end of that. The I got a master's degree, I have a PhD, whatever it is. I'm an academic. I'm an eight. I'm the director of HR for this company. I'm a business executive like this. So you're going to have black women that seem to be better served by the general stuff that the Democrats offer. So that wouldn't change, but black men potentially could have a place where a sizable percentage of us, not all of us, but a large percentage of us could actually be served. So I don't know. I mean, this is all speculation. They could say, you know what, surprise ninjas, you voted this way, we're in, now we don't give a crap about you. That's always, they always reserve the right to do that. But I don't know what the incentive would be for them to do that if it is a actual growing population, because they'd have to keep that population happy, or else they're going to lose it back to the Democrats, and then they can't win again.
Very, very good points. Very, very good points indeed. Now, so I was saying, this is going to be a short one today. It's going to be a short one
Yeah.
today, and the time flew right by. Okay, Trump won. Now what? Right? Now what? How can you placate and overcome the issues that are endemic to a populist regime? A populist regime is, by definition, an outsider, and a lot of times, example after example, all throughout the world, you've had populists come in and then have the challenge of governance, because you have the establishment, even let's say in this case within the Republican Party, whom we see have to be placated by the Marco Rubio appointment, for example. They have to be satisfied, they have to be kept happy. And then you have the administrative states, whom people such as Elon Musk are supposed to come in and try to regulate and, trim and all these other kinds of things with the Department of Government Efficiency and such. And one thing you mentioned, Dr. Thunder, is that time is a key aspect. It took a lot of time to get here, and it's going to take a lot of time to get to wherever the promised land might be. And this might just be the beginnings of certain things, right? So, in that very case, perhaps even the little things that you mentioned, such as, maybe they don't get, you said about 97% of the things that, someone like an Elon comes in and tells the, the administrative people will get thrown out. Maybe you try to get it to 90, and then maybe some learnings will be had, right? Key learnings regarding how you continue to further the programs of increasing government efficiency, because it also affects obviously the economy and these other kinds of things. It's not just an ephemeral, purely abstract concept. The debt actually does matter, right? The bloated federal government actually does matter. Inefficiency within the government does matter. The kind of crazy crony capitalism does matter. One idea that somebody brought up was perhaps Elon could spend another 40 billion and just replace the donor base of the not just Elon, but replace the current donor base of the Republican Party, right? Because that donor base is very important, right? And it's that donor base that controls things. You can call them whatever you want to call them. They tend to be more interventionalist in terms of foreign wars and heavy on the
Right.
military side of things. And if you want that to go away, then you're going to need to somehow replace that money, right? Because the Republican Party needs the money, right? So, and the populace, the population doesn't really have that money. But if you have a couple of oligarchs, shout out to Elon and whomever, then that might be a move to make in order to move things forward. Now, okay, Just a final thoughts and summary, starting with Kaiser, and then you can take us out, Dr. Thunder. But basically, we've been talking about all the things that I've mentioned. But you go ahead and give your commentary, Kaiser.
Yeah, so I think I think Trump winning was set in stone ever since um, these after he started surviving from these extremely unsurvivable things, right? He's been prosecuted. Somehow he survived that. Survived someone trying to analyze him as well. He survived so many different things and people coming from him. The brother has never, and again, he even became a brother, right? In the process, the brother has never even worked as a state senator or anything like that, right? He just came out of nowhere and then he's doing what he's doing, right? He's a populist. He's working. He's building himself a powerful billionaire club whereby he's creating his own light puppet government, right? The oligarchs in the open. So I think we're going to see some interesting things regarding America. I do think there's going to be a shift back to manufacturing in America, and I'm looking forward to see how this is going to affect the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say, you know, the whole, the felon language and the Kamala is the most experienced and the most qualified in history and all this kind of stuff. Um, so there's a couple things I think that sort of backfire with that. Uh, so one of the things I think that backfire, and I don't think people expected it, is that again, as I said, there's been a group of people that have been overly oppressed by lawfare, right? And that's been black folks, and so not that because black folks are all criminals, that's why we want to vote for a criminal, but more like black folks understand that the system can be weaponized against you, and also once it's been weaponized against you, then now they don't have to hire you. They can block you from stuff. They can do stuff that would be a violation of your civil rights. They can do to you. And so I think that folks that understand history, all of this, felon, he's a felon, he's a felon. They think that's an effective talking point, but it actually ends up coming across as elitist. And then the other part of this, kind of doubling down on how qualified she is, and in X, Y, and Z, and he is not qualified at all. Well, that's like sort of like the establishment argument, right? So then it makes her seem like she's the establishment, but then supposedly she's supposed to also be the one that is trying to come in and make all these changes to help all these people and stuff. But no, the a primary argument that folks have been using in your support is your qualifications. And now here's the problem with the and then of course here's the problem with that too, is that, and this is why the Constitution is framed the way that it is, qualifications to be a president is very simple. It's not based on degrees. It's not based on ever serving in office. You don't have to have ever served in office. You need to be 35 years old and a natural born citizen. If you are those two things, then you are qualified to be president. In trying to put other qualifications on top of that, it just makes you look elitist. So there's some things that
Something here with regards to the way I know certain people's minds work, right? So you're qualified, and then the rest is a democracy, right?
right.
In other words, then the people judge, right? Because people are going to be like, "Oh, boy, you mean that the bum down is like, let him go in there, and if they vote for him, then yes,
Right,
is he
exactly.
35? Is he not important? Yeah, great.
Right, and I just think that it backfires because because it also seems to be doublespeak, because who was talking about how this guy over here is going to be a threat to democracy, like this. But wait a minute. I mean, are you for democracy or not? Because they seem to be saying that you're the most qualified and that's why you should be the person. But wait a minute. I don't think that's democracy that you're talking about there. You need to be part of an elite club. And then if you're part of that elite club, the Divine Nine and, in HBCU and whatever else other club, if you're part of that club, then it's democracy. But if you're not part of that club, see, yeah. All right. Well, that's our time. And we're going to try to get back to a regular schedule with this. But thanks for being here, and we will see you next time. Peace out.